Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk about just fitness, weight loss, mental health, stuff of that nature. I guess for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Heiss, or as most people would know me on the interwebs, Polar Bear Mike or PBM. I am a professional Smite player. I've been playing for like 6, 7 years, something like that. And over the past couple years, I've been going through a pretty drastic, I would say, um, weight loss journey, which I can just show really quick, basically, for those who don't know. I have some notes and stuff to keep me on track, so it might look off. But yeah, I tweeted this a couple months ago, like January, and this is me, like January of 2018. It's actually still crazy to look at, but January of 2018, this was me, so 3 years ago. And then this was me fall of 2019, I believe. Yeah, fall 2019, like November-ish. And then this was me in January. So I think right here, I'm probably about 350, 360 pounds. In the last picture, I weigh, I believe, about 230, which is what I am right now. I'm 231 point something this morning. Who cares? But yeah, I get questions about this all the time. Just I would constantly just like post about I guess like my fitness journey and stuff like that. So I get a lot of questions about weight loss and how I did it, and just people who are seeking advice or just want to talk about it. So rather than me DMing people privately, I just think this could be a good resource. Weight loss isn't the only thing that I'm going to talk about, but it's definitely a big component. Sorry, I'm accidentally hit this, but just to have that resource available and talk about it a little bit. And if I can, there are plenty of people who helped and inspired me, so if I can return that favor, that would just be a really great thing. So that's my goal. I have some notes to help keep myself on track and try to keep the video as concise and coherent as possible. But I tend to be, as as the people who know me have come to learn, I can tend to be quite the ranter and really just go on tangents and go on and on and on and on. So I'll do my best. No promises. Probably going to be a long video. But yeah, so like I said, the reason I'm making this video is just get asked about it all the time. I think it's just a good dialogue that I think should be encouraged a little bit more to be talked about. I think a lot of, specifically when I get to mental health as well, I think a lot of fitness and health and mental health, there's stigmas around it. I think gender roles kind of play a part in that. I actually want to make a mental note to talk about that. Sorry, probably shouldn't type in the middle of it. But anyways, yeah, I just think there's a stigma, basically, or just kind of like a fear to be open about this sort of stuff. And a lot of these things, plenty of people struggle with. So I just feel like I have, pretty drastic lifelong experience with these things, and I just want to share that. And if it helps, that's awesome. And, if not, then, that's okay too. So as a disclaimer, I'm not an expert in these things, right? I don't have education on, I basically don't have any formal training or education on fitness, on mental health, on any of that stuff. I'm going off my own experience, but also a lot of individual research. I've read plenty of, I'm going to keep hitting this wire, aren't I? I watched tons and tons of stuff, read plenty of scientific studies, gone through, tons of just resources and tested a lot of things. So, I tend to know a good bit about this stuff, but it's not the same as if you really want someone to help you with your diet, or you really, want to figure out what you can do with your body, or maybe you have restrictions or health limitations or prior injuries, stuff like that. Obviously I'm not the person to really listen to for that. There's, trained professionals that would be much more helpful. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I'm just sharing my experience, right? So that's just kind of that. I also want to give a bit of a disclaimer to try to personalize this. I'm going to do my best to give advice that I feel is applicable to everybody. And I just want it to be known that what works for me or works for someone else might not work for you. And everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to want different things from, their body from how they like to live their life, what they like to eat, what makes them happy, all of those type of things. So, I'll try to be broad in the sense of making sure that, you can kind of fit what your goals are. And it's just important to understand, for example, if I talk about lifting and you want to be a runner, then there's not going to be the same sort of diet. There won't be the same sort of training regimen. I don't know if I probably won't show like workouts or, diet examples, nutrition logs, stuff like that for this video. If people are interested in that, I could add just like links to the comments or something like that. But yeah, we can get to that when we get to it. So the first thing that I think is important to start with just setting healthy goals with this stuff in general. I think this applies to, mental health, to weight loss. This just applies to everything, is to not beat yourself up and don't get ahead of yourself. I think it's really easy to feel overwhelmed and to see where you are and feel like things are really, really bad in that moment, and to feel like you have so much work that needs to be done and that you just can't see that gap being closed. It can feel very overwhelming. And I think the best thing to learn is to trust that process and not rush it, to go through the basics, to go through the learning curves, to go through those initial phases and really give it the proper time that it deserves, and try to find what is fun and sustainable for you. And I think this, like I said, it applies to mental and physical health, and there is a very strong correlation there. So, for example, you don't want to cut foods that you feel really good eating, right? If your favorite food is pizza, you don't want to cut pizza for an entire year or two in your diet. You're going to be miserable. You're, going to have a higher chance of relapsing. You're going to feel very stressed. You're going to feel overwhelmed. So, just understand that health is just a lifelong thing, right? Health can always fluctuate. It can, there's no such thing as a perfect healthy person, well, medically there is. I just mean, like, you can always find something, like, oh, you can always make your diet cleaner, you can always, look better or do whatever. It's silly to think that way, to have like a perfectionist mentality with it. So yeah, don't get overwhelmed by where you are, and don't worry about the end goal. Just give it time, focus on building healthy habits. That's the most important thing, is that you just want to slowly build healthy habits and figure out what you want, and you'll see results for sure. And you just got to be willing to give that time and be kind to yourself. So I'll start talking about weight loss, because I feel like it's, what I get asked the most. So questions I get that are very common are, where do I start? How do I find and keep motivation? Just comments about, this feels really overwhelming and I don't know what I'm doing, all of that type of stuff. So I would say, for where do I start on weight loss, the most important thing to understand is it needs to be a combination of diet and exercise. It's pretty simple. You need to be at a caloric deficit, you'll lose weight, right? So if you are very physically active, you can eat a lot more food and you can have a little more leeway in your diet. If you, maybe work like a desk or an office job and you're a little more sedentary, it might be harder for you to be able to burn calories on a daily basis, and you might have to be a little bit stricter with your diet. So that's kind of the first thing. So for where people should start, in my opinion, is kind of figure out, what you want to do, right? So I'll talk about exercise first and being active. Exercise has tons of benefits, not only just, actually physically, but mentally as well. It can be a nice little escape space from work, from school, whatever is going on. It can, even just taking a walk outside for like 10 minutes can, drastically improve your mental health throughout a day. And so I think when you're talking about exercise, it's important to think about, what do you have fun doing? Like, what could you look forward to? When you wake up and you don't have anything going on, is there, some sort of, hobby, some sort of physical activity that you would be excited about? It could be going on a walk or a run. It could be lifting. It could be going on a hike. It could be swimming. It could be playing a sport, either by yourself or with friends, or, whatever the case may be, right? So I think that's a really good place to start is, what you have fun with, and, what's manageable, what can you do consistently. So for example, hiking, you may not be able to go on a hike every single day, right? But maybe you could go on a hike every weekend, and you could, go to a gym where you could walk around your neighborhood every day or something like that. So, find out what you enjoy, and then find out what you could do most days or just multiple times per week, and what doesn't feel like a chore. You just don't want it to feel like a chore, basically, right? And I think for a lot of people, especially if you're getting into something very new, so like weightlifting, for example, it can feel like there's just so much knowledge that you have to gain, and it can feel really overwhelming. And I think it's really nice to have something where you finish a long work day, or you're just having like a bad day in general, and it's just nice to be able to like get an escape from that, just get like your headspace somewhere totally different and relieve stress. And exercise can be a really beautiful thing in that capacity. So that'd be the first thing, is really think about, what you like doing. You can lose weight doing anything, right? Like, I'll talk about my experience as a lifter a little bit because that's what I enjoy, but you could swim, you could run, you could walk, you could play tennis, you could play basketball, you could do anything, right? There's so many ways to burn calories. You could bike, you could, you just do a ton of stuff. So, there's not one correct way to do it. There's not one best way to do it. And I think that's a really good starting place, as I've said like 5 times. So after that, how do you find and keep motivation? So this is a really tricky one. This is something I struggled with pretty heavily. So for me, I've known since high school that I really enjoy weightlifting. And it's just a hobby that I had from like sophomore year, I think. I used to be very into it in high school. And then for my first year of college, I liked it a lot as well. I only went to college for a couple years. I didn't finish because I started my smite career. But anyways, yeah. I probably lifted for 3 to 4 years in a row, and then I hit a period where I didn't lift at all for 3 to 4 years, and I gained a lot more weight. I lost a lot of my strength that I had built up, and I was just, just a lot more unhealthy, right? And, for me, I was someone who, I played a lot of sports growing up. I would play, basketball, baseball were the main two, but I'd basically be playing sports either organized or just, with my friends pretty much year round. And once I kind of lost that, in high school I transitioned from sports to more weightlifting, like traditional team sports to more weightlifting. And then once I started going to college, I didn't really have those same friends around me, and there wasn't that sense of like bonding while lifting. I didn't really have people to push me. I kind of lost like a little bit of a competitive edge with it, I would say, as well. And I just lost a lot of motivation. And it's hard for me to pinpoint what got that back for me. I think I just felt like, for whatever reason, it just kind of clicked where I felt confident and I felt happy with the rest of my life. So specifically my job. I'll touch on this with mental health as well. But I used to be very obsessive and let my job basically dictate my mood single-handedly. So if it was going really well, I would feel great. And if I was dealing with tough losses, or maybe we weren't getting along as a team, I would feel awful. I wouldn't, I'd be slow to get out of bed. I'd be just feeling like very depressed. I just wasn't really having a great time with it. And it can be really hard to be in that mind state and to be able to find and keep motivation to, keep pushing yourself to, keep bettering yourself or keep making progress. And I feel like I've kind of reframed my mindset around that a little bit more, as I'll talk about. And it makes it a little easier, but motivation is best when it can be internal, right? So the best motivation you can have is that you want to do it for you, that you want to be healthier because you want to feel better, because you want to be happier, you want to have more energy, you want to have more fun, you want to feel better about, the way you look or the way you feel. And it doesn't have to be a drastic change, right? It could just be, you could not change your weight at all. That number could not shift whatsoever. And you might just feel better if you're more active. Your body might just feel more responsive. You might feel more energetic. Eating, better foods is, proven to give, more energy and improve your digestion and improve your like gut health, and just so many things that can just really change how you feel and really change how you approach a day. And I think that's the most powerful type of motivation. And there's also nothing wrong with having external motivation available as well, having people who inspire you, or people that you can talk to that can, kind of, keep you on the right track, or that can tell you to just keep going and that you're doing great and that you're making a lot of progress and that, having one bad day with it isn't the end of the world, right? And I think that can lead to that feeling of just being very overwhelmed and just being in a spot where you're kind of letting the weight of the end goal kind of bear down on you the entire process. And it's really important to kind of combat that feeling of I guess of being overwhelmed with just this like self-forgiveness and understanding that you can have a bad day, right? You can have a day where you're supposed to go to the gym, or you're supposed to work out, or you're supposed to run, and you just didn't feel like it and you didn't do it and you wanted to be lazy and you wanted to hang out and eat junk food, and that's cool. Or you can have a day where, like my favorite food is just like chicken wings. So sometimes I would just order like 20 wings and a ton of fries and I would just slam it. And, it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm eating like crap. This is horrible. I'm not doing myself any favors. I'm messing up. It's not like that. You can have bad days. You can have bad weeks and bad months. And, it's about the long term. It's about building sustainable habits, and it's about slowly tweaking things and about slowly integrating healthier habits and replacing unhealthy habits. And over time, that'll make a huge difference. And you don't let the end goal get ahead of you, and don't let the short-term feeling of being overwhelmed detract you from, what you're trying to accomplish, because you'll get through it. If you need help and you need people to reach out to, my DMs are open on Twitter. There's, I'm sure there's hopefully other people that you're able to reach out to. If you don't have someone to reach out to, please feel free, DM me on Twitter. I don't check it as much as I used to, but absolutely I would love to be as helpful as I could be with this type of stuff. So yeah, reach out to people. Don't feel alone with it. All really good things to be mindful of. So I guess I'll go into the statement that people will come to me with, where they're just like, I just straight up don't know what I'm doing. I've never had like physical hobby like that. Maybe you didn't play sports, or you've never really lifted before. You just haven't been physically active and trying to get into stuff, and it can be really hard, especially lifting. So I'll probably mainly talk about that because I think I most commonly get this sort of feeling of not knowing where to start and not knowing what you're doing with lifting. So lifting is a very interesting thing, or interesting topic, in the sense that there's a lot of different things that you can do. There's many different styles, and there are many different schools of thoughts on it, and there's plenty of scientific research behind all of them. That just depends on what you want to accomplish. My best advice would be, if you want to get into lifting weights, to really learn the beginner process and the basics and form, mainly form and technique. Learn those and give those time. When you go to the gym, and I know this from firsthand experience very well, it is really easy to get super excited when you first see progress, because you'll get what's called, newbie gains, I guess, where, you're gonna, it's kind of like it's called an exponential curve. Haven't been to school in a long time, but you're gonna have a very steep increase at the start, and then you'll slowly level off, and then it'll kind of just level, and it won't be as exciting down the line. So at the start, it can be really easy to think like, oh, I'm doing great at this, my form is great, look how much stronger I am. Don't get caught up in the numbers. Worry about your form and your technique and the health of your body. Make sure that you're able to move well. Mobility is really important. Not feeling not pushing yourself through small injuries and stuff like that is really important. Just give the basics time. Learn a few things. Learn a few main movements. Learn how to, if you're a power lifter, which is my style, learn how to squat with good form. Learn how to bench with good form. Learn how to overhead press with good form. Learn how to deadlift with good form. Do a couple accessories here and there. You don't even really need to do that. You could just do the main compound movement. Give it time, keep learning, keep refining your form, keep refining your technique. If you feel like that's not a good enough workout for you and that you're wanting more, you could try to learn some like accessory lifts, do some arm stuff, work on your core is a great thing to do. Do some cardio, jump rope, go on treadmill, stuff like that. Just give it time. You don't want to go from not doing it at all to, let me go look up this guy who's on Instagram who has, this insane 5 hour long workout and let me try to do that. And that's just too much. Just learn the basics and give it time. That's the best thing you could do with weightlifting. There's plenty of resources available on, proper form, proper technique, stuff like that. So that's my advice for lifting. I kind of covered it, but understanding that numbers aren't everything. So not only does that apply to lifting, but that applies to the scale as well. If you are someone who you look at the scale and it's really going to affect how you feel, try not to weigh yourself that common. Try to pick every Monday morning, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to, do whatever you want to do, shower, shave, whatever. Start your morning routine, or just wake up, weigh yourself. Boom, that's it. Every Monday morning, every Tuesday morning, whatever it is, just one day a week before water weight can really factor in. Weigh yourself, see how you're doing. Don't give it too much power. I am someone who I weigh myself every morning because I'm interested in the water weight and I'm interested in tweaking my diet, and I kind of just understand what I'm doing. And it doesn't really affect me that much. I'd be lying if I said it didn't affect me at all. That's definitely not the case. It does, I do think about it sometimes, but I think it's really good to not give a ton of power to that number. For example, there's people who could be my weight, that could be 230 pounds, that feel very different from how I feel right now, right? And everyone's going to feel a little bit different at certain numbers and in their own skin. And try not to get caught up in that. Try to just focus on your happiness and your health and how your body feels, and don't let the scale tell you what you should weigh as much. There are going to be cases, of course, where, maybe you do need to weigh under a certain amount to be healthy, or maybe you have other medical conditions, and that's kind of a different case. But, for the most part, this is, it's a spectrum. Everybody's different. People are built differently. I'm personally someone who I'm comfortable at a heavy body weight. I feel better at a heavy body weight. I don't think I would feel comfortable if I was, 160 pounds, for example, and I didn't have muscle on my frame or whatever. There's nothing wrong with, people who are comfortable at that weight. It's just not for me. It's just not how I personally feel happy. And I think that's a really important thing to understand. And, that goes into knowing, what, as I said earlier, knowing what you like to do for exercise. And this applies to with what body type you kind of feel comfortable at, and knowing how to eat for that, right? So if you're a runner and you want to be really light and you're very active, you probably don't want to eat, the diet that I ate, where I'm eating a ton of I'd ate basically 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day. You might not want to do that. You might want to eat a bit of a leaner diet. You might not want to have as many carbs and as much protein as I had. And, if you're someone, maybe you're a lot more active than me, or you're a power lifter or something like that, or that's what you want to do, you might be happier at, a weight that I am, or even a heavier weight if you're just a bigger person than I am. And, that's fine too. I might put some resources below about my caloric intake and some workouts that I did, but it's really nothing special. I just programmed it all for myself basically, and I just read studies. Maybe it'd be good to find studies. But yeah, that's something I could add to the video if people seem very interested. I kind of like just talking about it overall a little bit. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I guess this is less weight loss. Actually, one more thing about weight loss is calories and how you're eating. So diet's a very important thing to this. I talked about it a little bit earlier with being willing and being forgiving to yourself to eat a cheat meal or have foods that you really like. For me, the best thing you could do with your diet is don't change it at all for 2 weeks. Track what you eat. I used to scoff at this all the time. My mom and dad would tell me to, write down what I'm eating and track it and really really see what I'm doing. I used to think I know what I'm eating. I don't have to do that. I can just keep a mental note of it. And that can be true, but over a longer course of time, if you're trying to build healthier habits for the long run, it is really nice to have that resource available and that reference to go back and kind of see what you were doing, because you might hit a period where you might go really good for 3 months, and then you might have a month where you didn't feel that great, and you can kind of compare and see okay, well, what did I do differently? What should I tweak? What do I need to cut out or to do differently, and just adjust. So what I'd recommend to start, if you're struggling with your diet and you're struggling with building those habits, find something to track your diet. MyFitnessPal, I think, is a very common and good resource. I also used to wear like a Fitbit to track my calories during workouts, my heart rate and stuff like that. Fitbit also has the ability to have like a food log in there that I used for most of my time when I was tracking it. And I think that's a really good resource. But do that. Track your food for 2 weeks and don't change a thing. Literally, don't try to make it look good. Don't get down on yourself if it looks worse than you thought it would be or that you might have imagined. Just track it for like 1 to 2 weeks and just see any patterns or to see what you notice. And I think what'll happen is you might look at, oh wow, I'm actually eating a lot of calories or drinking a lot of calories from this thing that I don't really care about that much. So for me, that was soda. I really don't like soda that much. I don't drink soda at all anymore. I haven't for a little over 2 years now. It's just not really like, it doesn't really excite me. I don't really care about it. And it's just a lot of calories and it's a lot of sugar. I just thought, I could cut soda and introduce some healthier habits. And I don't really have to change all that much. I can still eat wings. I can still have fries. I can still have pizza every now and then. I can still do all these different things by just cutting that out and replacing that with, I really like coffee and I really like tea and just other drinks like that. Kombucha is also something that I drink. There could be a bunch of stuff that you like, and it doesn't have to be soda. It could be different foods, right? Maybe you eat like a ton of, I don't know, like a ton of potatoes, or you eat like a ton of rice, and maybe you don't care about it that much, and they're very like calorie, carb dense foods. So yeah, just track it for a little bit, see what happens. Slowly tweak. Don't do everything here and there. Don't look at your diet and be like, oh man, I had a lot of fast food and I drank a lot of soda. I'm just going to cut all of that out. Like, you don't have to do that. Do one thing at a time. You don't want to drop your calories too severely. What you're going to do is you're going to lose a lot of weight up front, but it's going to be an unhealthy way to do that because you're basically going to train your body to, I forget what it's actually called, but basically you're going to mess up your metabolism and you're going to train your body to plateau on that. And what you want to do is take the calories that you were eating when you were tracking it without changing anything and just slowly cut it. Just cut it 200 a week or 200 a day for an entire week or two. And then cut it by another 100. And then, maybe let it level off for a bit. Actually, you might not even want to cut your calories at all at the start, and you might just want to start working out. And that's a really easy way to start it, is to just don't change your diet that much. Just start finding something to do for physical activity, and then just go back and forth, right? So that's something I would do, is I would be going to the gym and not change my diet, and then I would keep going to the gym, change my diet a little bit. And I'd be like, okay, well, I kind of like my diet. I don't really want to change it. I'll work out more, and that, because I'm enjoying that. And then I would go, okay, well, I'm kind of putting a lot of time into the gym, or my workouts are really long or hard. My body feels kind of tired. I'll eat a little bit better. I'll change my lunches from having like a sub or a sandwich to, I'll do a salad for lunch. That's fine. Something like that. And you can just keep playing that back and forth game and kind of figuring out what you like and just giving that time. And I think that's just a really good tool to have. I personally would track my workouts and my food every single day. I wouldn't always measure my food. Sometimes I would, but for the most part, you get good at eyeballing it, or you get a routine. For me, like, I really liked oatmeal or eggs as my breakfast. So I would do, like eggs, toast, and then maybe I would like throw spinach in the eggs or something like that, tomatoes, anything like that. And then I would just have like a piece of fruit, a banana, or a kiwi. Most commonly, I would have like a kiwi almost every day. Or I'd have oatmeal, and with oatmeal, I kind of had like a few evolutions with that, I guess. I would do just like the standard like little packets that have like a ton of sugar in them at the start. They're fine at the start, but then I would just do like, normal like uncooked like stovetop oats, and I would do that. And then I would add, what I do now is I just have that, and I add protein powder now. You don't have to add protein powder, but I would do that, and then I would just mix in protein powder or chia seeds, flax seeds, tons of berries, fruit, other fruits, bananas, stuff like that, raisins maybe. You can put in like walnuts or other, types of nuts in there. You could do honey, peanut butter, almond butter, whatever you're really feeling. You can make it savory, you can make it sweet. I think oatmeal is a really, really good meal to do like that. But basically my point is, you might have a few meals that you really enjoy that you don't mind having almost every day, or just having really consistently. You don't need to start measuring that all the time. You'll be able to eyeball it and get within a reasonable range. Most people aren't trying to be like, aren't trying to be like 3% body fat, super lean, shredded, unhealthy. I mean, that low body fat is really unhealthy. But yeah, most people aren't trying to get to that point. You don't need to be super precise. Just have a general idea, track it a little bit, keep yourself a little bit, be honest with it, right? You're doing it for yourself. So lying on it to fudge the numbers is only hurting you. Don't get stressed about it. You can have days where you eat like crap. I had days I normally would eat 3,000 to 4,000 calories. When I wasn't able to go to the gym, when COVID quarantining first occurred last March, end of March, early April, I was just doing a lot of like walking and biking and stuff like that because I couldn't lift, and I would cut my calories. So I went from eating about 3,000 calories a day to eating like 2K to 2,500, something like that. Not a huge cut, but definitely a pretty substantial cut. And then I would do that, and then I raised it back up when I was lifting because I would want more protein, I'd want more carbs to fuel those workouts. It would not be uncommon for me to go from 3K on one day to 4K the next, and then to 2K, and then have like literally a 6,000 calorie day where I'm just really hungry and I can't get enough food. Not uncommon for me at all. Don't freak out about that. You can have days where you're really overindulging yourself. Don't want to make a horrible habit of it, and you don't want to do it all the time, but you can forgive yourself for doing it every now and then. It's cool. I promise you'll be all right. So yeah. I guess now I'm going to transition from weight loss to more, I guess, just like fitness overall, and understanding that your mental and physical health are very correlated, are very tied together, and that's why I think it's really important to have habits that are sustainable, because this stuff is going to apply to you pretty much no matter what, and you want to be able to do things that don't feel mentally draining, that don't feel like a chore, that don't feel like if you have a bad day that you're failing either yourself or someone else, or you feel like you're letting people down. You don't want to do that. So, you want to kind of have a lot of self-kindness and forgiveness in the sense that this is kind of just like an ebb and flow thing, and it's a long journey with fitness, and it could take a while. And I think the biggest thing I want to talk about with just fitness overall is self-confidence and self-esteem, which is something that I've really struggled with, still am struggling with. And I think it's really important to not give too much power to media. Nowadays, we're so buried in our phones. Sorry, that's a reference that nobody's going to get. But, it's really easy to go on Twitter or Instagram or whatever and look at people who just have advantages, who are just, maybe doing it for a living, or they just, whatever, and to compare yourself to those people, or to compare yourself to other people in the gym or other people, don't make it competitive. That can be really dangerous with fitness. Like, body standards are so ridiculous in so many ways, right? Like, I'll talk for myself personally. I have a lot of advantages with fitness. My job is, in terms of how many hours I have to spend per day on it, I have a ton of free time. I can focus a lot on my diet. I'm working from home a lot of the time, so I'm able to cook constantly. I'm able to control what I eat very easily. I don't have to worry about convenience that much. I can give a ton of time and energy to how much I want to work out, both length of the workout and the frequency of them. If you're someone who you're going to school and or you have a job that, is maybe more of a standard like 9 to 5 sort of thing, that's going to be a lot harder. And I have a lot of advantages with that. And it's really hard to, compare that sort of thing and to try to what I may be able to do, you might not be able to do. And there's people that I can't do what they're able to do because they might be doing it professionally. They might be, people could also be on steroids, for example, if they're like a male influencer, I think is the most common on like Instagram or whatever. And, it's really hard to compare yourself and to uphold those unrealistic and unhealthy body standards. Just try to find a place where you're confident in yourself and you feel good about yourself. And I'm someone who I am very, very competitive, and I am not to use like the cliche of it, but I am definitely a perfectionist in that sort of sense where like I always look for something to improve. I always feel like there's something to get better at, and I always feel like there's another goal, there's another, task to achieve, there's another, milestone to reach. And I think specifically with this type of stuff, with physical and mental health, it's very detrimental to be that way because there's not an end goal to this. you can always wake up and feel like you could look better. You know, for me, I could always feel like, oh, I wish my chest was bigger, my shoulders were bigger, my arms were bigger. I wish I was faster. I wish I was a little leaner. I wish I didn't have like, you know, loose skin here, or wish I didn't have loose skin around my gut, or wish, you know, I looked a certain way with this, or, you know, I wish I was stronger, or whatever. Like, there's so many things that you can go through that are just so damaging. And if you're comparing yourself to other people and you're trying to uphold these unrealistic expectations and goals and stuff like that, you know, you're just going to dig your own grave basically with it mentally. And I guess I'll talk about, I mean, I have a ton I want to go off of on this, and this is kind of getting more into the mental health piece, which is kind of more, I think it's maybe the less common thing I get asked about, but it's more what I want to talk about, because I feel like mental health is kind of a taboo topic where it's not really that freely or openly discussed. So I just kind of want to give my perspective, my opinions on it, and what I've kind of learned throughout my process and journey on it, and just kind of speak to that a little bit. So, you know, I guess I'll talk about, I mentioned it a little bit with like body image standards and with, you know, influencers and social media, and just kind of how it's marketed to have these like unrealistic standards. I think in mental health that can apply as well. So I guess I'll talk about like gender differences a little bit. So for like mental health, I think for men tend to get a really bad stigma around mental health, where you don't really want to talk about your emotions that much, or it's kind of like, it's like looked down on to talk about your emotions, or to, you know, to try to reach out to people, or to, you know, be open about that type of stuff. It's almost like a sign of weakness, which is, you know, I think the culture is shifting away from that more recently, which is good. But, you know, I'm definitely someone who, maybe I bought into that when I was younger, but, you know, that type of stuff is really damaging and really ridiculous. You know, like your mental health and just, you know, feeling overwhelmed, or feeling, it doesn't even have to be like feeling depressed, but just feeling emotional and just needing to vent about those sort of things. That's just like a basic human feeling and necessity. So I think taking care of your mental health and understanding that, and not feeling alone, I guess, especially if you have big goals with like weight loss or something like that, I think really important to be a little bit more, maybe not mature is the right word, maybe for younger people it is, but to be a little bit more understanding with that stuff, I think is very important. So I guess on the mental health side of it, this definitely applies to the gym, but like understanding that, like I said earlier, people are going to be different, right? And don't be so judgmental towards yourself or to other people, especially. Like, you just don't know what they're going through, or, you know, how they feel, or what they're, you know, what they want to accomplish, I guess, or, you know, where they want to be. So, you know, for example, like, you might see someone, I guess I'll talk from my perspective, right? Because I'm someone who, I struggle very heavily with being self-conscious and having low self-esteem. I just have always been that way. And I developed basically body dysmorphia through my lifting process, which is very common in lifters. And, you know, when I was 390 pounds, I definitely felt pretty down on myself. But when I was like 340 pounds, I lost 50 pounds. I felt great, because that was huge progress for me. And I could see those changes, and it was really easy to feel good about that. But then when I got to like 280, 290, I started to buy into those, a little bit more of those standards of like wanting to look a certain way, I started to see like separation in my muscles. I would start to see like a lot more definition, and I would start getting in my own head about that. And I eventually got to the point when I was like 260 pounds. And I mean, even up till now, I kind of just hate the way I look at times. Like, and body dysmorphia is just really hard with that, where, you know, even if I was objectively healthier, or, you know, people would tell me that I looked good or looked better, I didn't feel that way at all. I felt really horrible. I hated my body. I hated, you know, like I said, having like loose skin here. I mean, I'm literally like grabbing it, right? Like, I'm just looking at my cam, but like, yeah, I'm like literally grabbing it. I like hate having loose skin. I hate wearing like shirts that kind of like show it. And I, you know, hate having like, you know, gut loose skin as well, because I feel like, you know, for example, this isn't the point of this, but like my body fat percentage is like 15%. I've seen it like as low as 12. I've seen it as high as like 17-ish recently within the past couple months. I don't know how accurate that is, so give or take a couple percentage points. But yeah, I think like my body fat percentage is about 15, and I don't feel like that because I have loose skin that I hate having be visible, and it makes me feel like pretty awful about myself, and it's really hard to feel confident. But at the same time, it can go, it can kind of go the other way as well, where I was 340 pounds and I felt great, but people would make fun of my weight, and people would, I remember watching Worlds in season 4 when we won, and I remember reading the chat and seeing people talk about like, oh my God, this team is so fat, or look how fat Mike is, blah, blah, blah. Like, he looks like he just ate another human, like stuff like that, right? And, it's just, people will be mean, right? Especially when you work in the public eye, or you're like a public figure to some capacity, even if it's like a smaller scene or, whatever the case may be. You learn to block out some of that noise, but everyone's human, right? And definitely can get to you. So just like, people will be mean. There will be people who are trying to be malicious or who are trying to hurt you. But there's a lot of just comments around it in general where, you can lose weight in an unhealthy way, right? You could feel bad about losing weight. I'm sure there's people who struggle to gain weight, right? That would like to gain weight, that get called like skinny, or like, they look like a twig or stuff like that, or they're a stick. And, none of that's cool. All of that, like commenting on people's bodies and telling them how they should feel and what they should look like is just not like a cool or kind thing to do in any capacity. You don't, in my opinion, this may be a more controversial thing, but in my opinion, there's a line to that where you also don't want to encourage super unhealthy habits, right? Like, I wouldn't encourage drinking 5 liters of soda a day, right? Like, it's just not necessary. It's too much sugar. It's just really unhealthy. You might be okay at that weight. You might feel good at like a heavy weight if you're heavy and you'd like drink a lot of soda, but that doesn't mean the actual habit of drinking the soda is good, if that makes sense. Like, I still think healthy habits should be encouraged. I just don't think you should shame people into being healthier. That's not a good way to go about it. Negatively motivating people is not the way for everyone to be happier and to be better off. It's just a really crappy thing to do. So yeah, I guess that's kind of my piece with like body dysmorphia and with body image. I think, like I said, there are gender differences there. I think the standards that are kind of put on women are pretty insane in kind of like the, I guess, like beauty industry or just, social media or body image or stuff like that. And, I guess I can't truly speak to experience with that, but I can just speak to, from a guy's perspective, I think it's really damaging to comment on a woman's appearance like that and to make a lot of, pretty much just like sexist or misogynistic remarks, or I guess I'll talk about like gym etiquette a little bit, where you'll see a lot of guys who are like being pretty creepy around girls at the gym. Like, they like purposely like try to go next to them wherever they work out to like be near them, or they will like always have their phone out, and you're like worried if, they're like pointing their phone at the girl, or like I have friends who have told me that they don't really feel comfortable in a gym because they feel like if they squat, for example, that guys will just be looking at them and just be very creepy. And I just want to talk about that from a guy's perspective for a second, and just obviously say, like, one, if you're doing that, you should really reevaluate like how you're making people feel, and kind of like look at yourself in the mirror a little bit with that, and hopefully realize how screwed up it is. And, if you're someone who you witness other people doing that, feeling, I guess, like confident or brave enough or courageous enough to like call that out and to stop that, I think is really important. I think, for me, I've had a lot of friends through either high school or even now that, maybe don't feel that comfortable working out in public because of that type of stuff. And it's not just men to women, right? I don't want to overgeneralize it. It can just be, this can apply to guys as well, and it could apply both ways, certainly. But I think the most common one is men being creepy towards women at the gym. So just like, when people are working out and they're in public, like I said, you might not know how that person feels. Even if you think they look good or they look a certain way, it might not match how they feel. And most people who are working out or at the gym are there either to, maybe for both reasons, but most commonly it's to just try to look better, feel better about their body, and feel better about the way they look, and or to try to like find an escape for their day and to have some stress relief and to just have something to get their mind off things. And I think it's really important to respect that space and to give people that space at the gym and to, just be basically just try to like be a basic good person with like kindness and empathy with that type of stuff and not. Yeah, I mean, I could go on about that topic forever, but I think it's important to touch on, and I think it's important to highlight, certainly. And then I guess another thing I want to talk about, I'll talk about overall mental health outside of fitness as well, but I think it's also important in this capacity to try to be available for others and try to understand them. For me, it was really hard for me to explain to people around me how I felt because I'm very lucky to have a lot of very fortunate to have a lot of very like caring people around me that I can talk to and that I can reach out to. And for a long time, it was really difficult for me to talk about how I felt about like loose skin or how I felt about body dysmorphia or how I felt about just the mental impact that sort of stuff had over me for so long because I almost felt guilty talking about it or going to people with my problems because, I live a very fortunate and privileged life with this type of stuff and it almost felt wrong to talk about it. And I think that's a really damaging mindset where, I don't think anyone should feel alone with that stuff. And, if people wanted to reach out to me, I would never have those type of thoughts, and, like I said, if you're someone who you don't have people to reach out to, please, send me a DM on Twitter, try to, reach out to me. I'll do my best to be available with that stuff because I understand a lot of this stuff and I've gone through a lot of it. And I lived my entire life basically being obese and being very overweight and being very depressed. And it's not easy to deal with. And especially when you struggle to like logically explain things, like with me and body dysmorphia, I would look at old pictures and be like, okay, well, I objectively like look healthier, I feel healthier. Why do I feel so horrible about myself? It's really hard to vocalize that. It's really hard to talk about that. And I think it's important to just try to like build that feeling of comfortness around being vulnerable with that stuff and just understand like, everybody has things that stress them out, that they're struggling with, that they're going through. It could be work, it could be school, it could be health, it could be relationships in their life, with friends, family, significant others, whatever it is, right? Like colleagues at work, there's plenty of stuff everybody has going on. And I think it's good to be more open and build those dialogues with people that you trust and to try to share that and to try to be available for others and to, feel comfortable reaching out to people you trust yourself. I think all of these things are just something that everybody at some point will struggle with or will deal with or will think about. And I really hate how mental health just feels like a foreign topic to a lot of people. I think I'll just speak from my experience, like especially in men, I think there's just a lot of suppression around it and there's a lot of almost shaming for being emotional or for being open. It's like a sign of weakness. And it's just such a detrimental or damaging mindset, and it's definitely not something that should be encouraged. And I think it's really important to build against that and to try to be more open and to try to do all of those things. I know I'm talking in circles a lot with this, but I just really strongly believe it, so I'm just trying to emphasize it. I want to talk about mental health as it pertains to, it's nearly 50 minutes already, so I'll try to wrap it up a bit. I figured it'd be about an hour, so it's not that crazy. But I want to talk about mental impact that I've had. I probably should have put this at the start of the video with, my whole journey with like being overweight ever since I was a kid and stuff like that. But for me, I started playing video games a lot when I was in like third grade, and friends that I had in my neighborhood that I used to like go over their houses and play sports and like do stuff with outside kind of moved away, and I went into my other hobby that was gaming. And it wouldn't be uncommon for me to like play WoW for like 14 hours a day. If I had a day off school, I would literally just sit inside, play WoW, eat Doritos, drink Mountain Dew the entire day, pretty much. And building unhealthy habits as a gamer, I guess I'll talk about, where I'm sure that's a very common problem for a lot of people. I think it's good to try to build into these outlets. I think like I said, having some sort of physical activity could be really good to help that. And I think especially in COVID times, it can be really hard because feel trapped at home and feel like they are spending a ton of time playing games or they don't really have escapes from that, and it can be very daunting, basically. And hopefully we're getting to a point where people can be vaccinated and we can kind of move past that a little bit as time goes on. But COVID's definitely been very hard with this type of stuff and with feelings of depression or feeling trapped specifically. And I think it's important to, one, have a sense of like forgiveness in the idea that, it's just kind of tough times that people are dealing with. And, you never know how COVID might be affecting family or it might be affecting, themselves or whatever. And I think gaming can be a really great escape from that. And I think, for me personally, I feel very grateful to be able to play a video game as my job and to be an entertainer and to kind of be able to provide that outlet for people or that entertainment for people that maybe are struggling with those things. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's just good to build kind of that sense of, I guess, community, like I said, and to, have, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but basically that, in gaming, I think a lot of unhealthy habits can exist. And I think it's good to encourage everybody to just basically be there for one another and to, I know plenty of people who have talked to me within the Smite community about, weight loss or stuff like that. And I just think it's really good to be more open about that dialogue. There's plenty of people who have inspired me. I mean, I'll just rattle off a few names, but like, Gore Miser, flipping this thing again, Gore Miser and, Cuvo Fred and just, Scream, one of my former teammates who lost a ton of weight as well. Like, so many people have inspired me, and you can see people who are, building healthy habits. And I think you don't want to shame anyone for having unhealthy habits as like a stereotypical gamer. But I also think it's good to encourage kind of like getting an escape from that stuff, taking walks or, doing things like that. I guess I'll talk about my own experience with like depression through that stuff. It wasn't like clinically diagnosed, but I guess just feelings of depression, I guess. I used to be very obsessive with my job. I used to like, if we, specifically like the E United days, I guess, like season 4-ish or even before that, the results of matches or even of scrims would just completely dictate my mindset. I would be very, very low after losses, and I would be very obsessive, and I would be very addicted to, I guess, like progress or trying to like fix those things in the short term and just really over obsess about them and overanalyze and overthink. And it basically led to this feeling of like not having balance in my life. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit in my own experience, and if it can help other people, great. But I think the most common thing I get now is like, why don't I stream? Why don't I make content anymore? Why don't I want to do these things, And for me, it's pretty linked to my experience with depression, and it's pretty linked to my experience with my mental health, where I care by far in my job. I care most about the competitive aspect of it. That's, how I view myself. I view myself as a competitive player. I view myself as a pro player. What's important to me is to play my best and do my best to win and try to facilitate a good team environment and to be a good teammate. And, of course, there's times where I get burnt out and I'm not nearly as good at those things as I would like to be. And I'll think, I could be a better teammate. I could be playing better. I could be doing all those things. When I stream, it's hard to get an escape from that. It's really hard to I'm not passionate about content creation. It's just not really for me. It doesn't really get me going. Sometimes it's nice to have a one-off stream here and there and talk about that type of stuff, or talk about different stuff, or, maybe even talking about this type of stuff would be fun, or talking about fitness, or, watching old games back, or just chatting in general could be really fun. But on a daily basis, I'm not someone I don't even play the game outside of scrims on a daily basis that much. Maybe I'll play a few games here and there, but yeah, for me, it's pretty mentally detrimental because I've learned through my experience with depression that I needed those outlets. I needed those escapes. I needed to be able to go take a walk. I needed to go cook for myself. That's another thing I really like to do. And, those sort of things I feel like I can't do if I'm constantly surrounded by Smite all the time. If I were to scrim, I'm of course gonna think about the game and think about the strategy and stuff like that in my own time. So if I'm doing that and I'm scrimming and I'm streaming and I'm constantly like getting questions like, oh yeah, like you guys lost this set, can you like talk about it, whatever, I just wouldn't have that escape and it would be very detrimental for me. And I think I can kind of see other people who have maybe gone through a similar thing. Doesn't have to be like as a pro player or a streamer, but just like not having that escape from something that can be really fun but also stressful and mentally taxing at the same time. It's really important to build those other avenues and have balance in your life, and that's something that I've learned. And that's just something I wanted to talk about with depression, why I didn't stream. Another thing that helped with my depression was, of course, my physical health helped a lot, but also talking to people, as I said, with mental health, and specifically as it pertains to men, I would say. I was someone who was pretty closed off for a long time, where I would just basically like grind, I guess, all the time. I would just be very like goal oriented, and I would just be like, I'll feel happy when I do this. When I weigh this amount of weight, I'll feel good. When I win worlds, I'll feel good. When I, do this, this will happen. And that never really works. You just set a new goal and you set a new expectation. And I think it's good to just try to live in the moment a little bit more, try to be a little bit more... Live in the moment is kind of just the best way to put it, but to just live in the moment, to be more open and forgiving with that type of stuff, to not be so goal-driven or oriented, in my case, is still something I'm doing where, like, I just have a very obsessive and addictive personality. It's very easy for me to overanalyze and overthink something. And, that's just my personal experience. Other people may feel differently or may have other issues they struggle with. And I just think it's important to, kind of realize, what you're dealing with and know how to help that. And, I learned it from just talking to people or from reading about it and just trying to work on it slowly. And I definitely know it can be really hard. So, to summarize all of this, I'm going to reiterate again, but, if you need someone to talk to with this type of stuff, mental health or weight loss or fitness or feelings of like, in my case, like body dysmorphia or insecurity or whatever, please, reach out, DM me on Twitter. If you don't have other people that you're close to that you feel comfortable going to, I'm more than happy to talk about it. Of course, I don't check Twitter as much as I used to, and I'm only one person, but I will definitely, get back to people because I care a lot about this, and I don't think anyone should deserve to feel alone in that aspect. So yeah, hopefully this video helped, and hopefully, it can just get conversation started, or it can, get people thinking about this type of stuff. And, if that's all of it does, then great. And if it didn't help, then, if it maybe even just let people understand a little bit more about me or, how I think about this stuff, then, that's cool too. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope everyone has a great day. And that's all, folks.